What's up, awesome humans, and welcome to my channel. Also, welcome back to those of you who have already been here. I really appreciate you coming back. That's super awesome. I'm Sarah Matthews, for those of you who don't know, and in this video, we're going to be processing the Triangulum Galaxy M33 in PixInsight while the data is in a nonlinear state, so the data has been stretched. If you don't have data of the Triangulum Galaxy and have data from another galaxy imaging session that you have, that's going to work just fine as well. And if you want to check out part 1 of this video series where we process the data while it's in a linear state, I will link that video down below if you want to check it out. So without further delay, let's dive right into it. Before we get started, let's do a quick recap on what we did in part 1 to our data of M33, the Triangulum Galaxy. So we started off with 4 master light files, a red master light file, a green master light file, a blue master light file, and an HA master light file. If you don't have HA data, as I mentioned in the video before this, don't worry, you can just skip over any of those parts that are related to HA in the workflow. So all these images were taken using my ASI 2600 Pro monochrome camera. We then took these images and we made sure that they were all registered to the highest signal to noise ratio image. I had already done that in the pre-processing steps of my workflow, so I did just go over how to do it with star alignment if you hadn't done it already. After that, we removed stacking artifacts in our images using dynamic crop, and then we applied some dynamic background extraction to correct the images from gradients and flat filled errors. After that, we then created a color RGB image with the channel combination process with our red, green, and blue master light files. And then we unlinked the color channels of the RGB image using the screen transfer function process. After that, we applied some plate solving data into the image for color calibration, and then we performed color calibration using the spectrophotometric color calibration process, or SPCC, in PixInsight. After that, we relinked the color channels of the RGB image with screen transfer function, and then we created a synthetic luminance image from that RGB data. Now, if you already had a master luminance file, then you didn't have to create that synthetic luminance image, but I didn't have a master luminance file, so I just created a synthetic one. And so regardless, we are using the luminance image for sharpening and adding contrast to our RGB image in this video, part 2, right now, or pretty soon here. To do that, we first applied some linear noise reduction to the luminance image, and then we applied deconvolution as well, just to unblur the image and make it look a little bit sharper. And then after that, we applied linear noise reduction to the RGB image and then to the HA image. And so now we are ready to finally stretch our data so it is no longer in a linear state. I'm sure you know this already, but there are several ways that you can stretch data in PixInsight, but the real key here is to make sure that the RGB, the luminance, and the HA images are stretched with the same histogram values so that when we do combine the images later on, it goes seamlessly and doesn't end up looking all wonky. Now, I do usually use the generalized hyperbolic stretch script in PixInsight to stretch my images, but for this tutorial and for the sake of time and focus, we are going to be using some really great PixelMath stretching techniques from astrophotographer and YouTuber Bill Blanshan. Please go check out his YouTube channel. It's great. He makes really great videos and really great PixelMath expressions. His YouTube channel is called Another Astro Channel. So first, you're going to need to download the PixelMath process scripts I'm referring to. I will provide a link to the Google Drive down below in the description box for you. So from that link, you will arrive here and you want to click on this file here and download it to your computer. I've already done that, so I'm not going to download it again, but make sure you download it. Once you have downloaded it to your computer, I recommend placing it somewhere on your desktop where you can access it easily. Just make sure it's not in the actual PixInsight application folder or any of the subfolders, because it will be deleted once you've uploaded the PixInsight application. So I have the stretching maths file here, and I'm going to open it to my working space. I'm going to minimize RGB and Loom for now, and once you have added that file, you should have 3 new PixelMath process icons right here. So let's stretch the RGB data first, and to do that we are going to be using this second process icon, HT stretch linked RGB. This just means it's a linked histogram stretch. So this is going to be really good for RGB data where the data has been color calibrated. So go ahead and open that up, and this is what it looks like. We are going to be using the default settings. So for shadow clipping, the default value is at -2.8. I find that works really well for this data set. You can of course mess around with these values and see what works best for your data though. And then for the background value, again, we're going to use the default, and that's at 0.2. So let's apply this to RGB. I forgot to remove the auto stretch before. So this is what it comes back with, and I think it looks really good. So let's close out of that, and we can open up the Luminance image here. And now we can take off that auto stretch. And then for monochrome data like we have here, and for narrowband data that has not been color calibrated, we are going to be using this unlinked stretch here. And again, we want to keep the values the exact same that we did for RGB so that all of the histograms align after we've stretched the data. So let's keep everything here at the default and apply this to Loom. All right, and then last but not least, we need to apply the same stretch to HA. So again, if you don't have HA data, don't worry at all. It's totally fine. Oh, I forgot to take the auto stretch off first. It's okay. And there we are. So I'll minimize HA, minimize Loom, close out of this. Now that we have our RGB, Luminance, and HA images stretched, we are ready to move on to the nonlinear processes that we want to focus on. So we're going to start with the Luminance data first before we merge it into RGB, minimize RGB. So we are going to add some contrast and bring out the details of our Luminance image a little bit more, and we are going to start with the local histogram equalization process to do this. So come up here to process, all processes, and down to local histogram equalization. It's right here. And the process looks like this. So because we are trying to affect the details within this image, particularly in this the galaxy itself, we don't want to apply anything to the background or to the stars in the background. So before we apply this, we need to create a mask. So to do that, come up here to process, all processes, and over and down to range selection. And the process is going to look like this. For the lower limit, or actually let's create a preview. For the lower limit, let's make sure that the entire galaxy is included. And then for smoothness, I want to make sure that background is super smooth. So I'm going to do a full send actually and just go all the way up to 100. And then we want the edges to at least be somewhat feathered or fuzzied. I don't know, fuzzy, okay. All right, that looks good. Press apply. You can close the real-time preview, minimize range selection, and then let's add this range mask to Loom. So click, carry it over to the Luminance image, and you'll know that it's applied because the identifier of Luminance now is orangish brown, I guess. Let's minimize range mask that we just created, bring it over there. You can also see the mask by coming up to mask, show mask, and the red is protecting the areas that we want protected, so the background and the stars in the background, which is good. I'm gonna disable that effect now. So it's still on there, but let's go back to local histogram equalization. Let's open up the real-time preview window. So we're going to apply 2 passes of the local histogram equalization process to this Luminance image. The first pass is going to be focused on addressing the larger scale structures, and then we are going to work on the smaller scale structures. So if you did have a chance to watch part 1 of this video series, we went over wavelets and how wavelets exist in our images at different scales. So we are basically working on the larger scales of our image first, and then we're working on the smaller scales after that. So we have our mask on, and now you can see the default parameters applied. So that's definitely way too much, and we need to adjust some parameters. So we are going to mostly be focusing on these first 3. You don't want to do anything with histogram resolution or circular kernel. The kernel radius determines the size of the structure that you are applying this effect to, and again, we're working on wavelet scales. So anything with a value above 100 usually means we're working on the larger structures in our image, and anything with a value below 100 is typical for working on smaller structures in our image. For contrast limit, this generally is okay at 2.0. We might reduce that later on. Just means how much contrast is going to be added in. And then for the amount, this determines how much of the original image versus the new image we're looking at. So at the default here of 1.0, what we're seeing here is basically only the affected image. So for now I'm going to keep it at 1.0, but once I have the settings that I want dialed in, we will go back and we will reduce that a little bit. So again, we're working on the larger scales first. So we want a value of at least over 100, so let's just bring it up to 100 and see what that looks like. And for our larger scales, in particular for galaxies and this image of M33, we want to bring out more of these bands, the bandings of the galaxy, and add a little bit more contrast. Everything that I'm going to be doing is all just artistic preference here, so if you would like to use different values based off of your data set, go for it. It's all very subjective. There is no perfect or right way, and so I'm just doing what I think looks best here in the moment. My hope is that just teaching you how to use the process itself, you can apply what you think looks best for your image. So at 100, that looks okay, but I want to make these bands more pronounced. So let's go all the way up to 200. And there's definitely more separation, which is good. That's what I envisioned that I would want here. So I am good with that. I'm going to keep the contrast limit at 2 for now, and then for amount, we'll bring it down to 0.5. So what we're seeing here is half of the original image and half of the affected image blended together. And that looks pretty good. Maybe I'll bring it down like a little bit. So before this is applied, we can see what the original image looked like, and this is it here. You can just click on this button here. So this is going to be the original image. This would be with the local histogram equalization settings that we have here applied. I'm happy with that, so let's apply that. Okay, let's close out of the real-time preview really quick, and that looks pretty good. So we are going to work on the smaller scale structures now of this image, and that's going to include these smaller bands in here, these dust lanes here. So come back over here to local histogram equalization. Let's real-time preview. Let's reset. And again, for kernel radius, we want a value of under 100 for targeting these smaller scales here. So I am going to start at 98 and kind of just move down from there. You can create a preview within a preview, very Inception-like, to get a better close-up. And again, all just personal preference. Let's bring this down. I like that. Just try to bring this down 0.5. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to apply these settings. Okay, we can close out of the real-time preview. And we are done with local histogram equalization. We can minimize that. Now the next thing that I want to do is I want to focus on bringing out some of the hidden details of the core. I don't want a ton of them, but I definitely want to bring out some of these detailed parts in the core that may have been washed out. So I'm going to remove this mask that we currently have on, come up here to mask, remove mask, and I want to create a mask that is isolating our core. And to do that, we are going to use the game script. So come up here to script, down here to utilities, over and down to game. Now the cool thing about the gaming script is that we can create masks with ellipses in them. So let's zoom in to the core so we have a better look. And I'm going to bring that in a little bit. I am going to make sure that it is a gradient mask, and once you have the shape that you like, press OK. If you didn't already have an ellipse on the screen, sorry, I missed that part, just press add and a new ellipse will appear. So once you've moved the ellipse to the areas that you like or to the center, go ahead and press OK. Alright, now I'm going to apply this to Loom. Minimize this. Let's just see what it's protecting. Mask, show mask. So there is the core of the galaxy. So let's open up the process. It's going to be HDR multi-scale transform. So come up here to process, all processes, and down to HDR multi-scale transform. Open that up. Okay, I'm gonna just remove the display of the mask. So let's create a preview. Come up here to preview, new preview, and I'm going to put this over the actual galaxy itself. And the main parameters here that we are going to be focusing on are the number of layers and the scaling function. Don't worry about iterations. I usually just keep it at 1, otherwise it just looks like too much. So let's apply the default and I will show you what that looks like. So apply the default to preview 1. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now we are done with our luminance processing. Now we're going to combine the RGB image and the luminance image. Now we are at a place where we can combine the luminance image with the RGB image. So before we do that, let's just check out the histograms for the RGB and luminance image to make sure that they match up. Let's open up histogram transformation. If you don't have this open, come up here to process, all processes, and over to histogram transformation. And let's look at the luminance image first. So let's select that as our view. And taking a mental note of this histogram right here. So the peak is here. Now let's select the RGB image. So everything looks like they match. We are ready to go for our L RGB combination. You can minimize histogram transformation. Come up here to process, all processes, and down to L RGB combination. So the process looks like this. We don't need these selected, we just need L selected, and then we need to put this image for L. So let's select that in the drop-down menu, press OK, then open up your RGB image, and we won't do anything else. Now let's apply this luminance image to our RGB image. Next, we are going to use the color saturation process to bring up the colors of our galaxy and our stars, and bring down the color saturation in the background. So let's open up color saturation, come up here to process, all processes, and over down to color saturation. So this is what the tool looks like, but before we actually use it, we need to create a mask. we're going to create another range mask. So just minimize color saturation for now. Open up range selection, and again, if you don't have it open anymore, come up here to process, all processes, and down to range selection. Click reset, open up the preview window, the real-time preview, and let's start dialing in those settings with the lower limit first. So drag that over, and I'm going to try to get as much of the edge of the galaxy as possible. So let's try at 0.23. And then I also don't want to add any more saturation to the cores of my large stars. So I'm going to bring the upper limit down to 0.9. So that's why you should see the black here. I'll bring it down a little bit more. Should be good, actually. Okay, so for smoothness, let's bring that over to 7.5, and fuzziness, that looks pretty good. Okay, let's try this mask and see how that works. Press apply. Minimize that. So before I apply this mask to RGB, I'm going to just make it a little bit more contrasty. So I'm going to open up histogram transformation, press reset, and I want the range mask 1 selected, preview, and I'm just going to bring down the black point. I'm gonna just do that. It's pretty good. Press apply. Minimize that, and then we can apply this range mask 1 to RGB. Preview, okay. So I'm going to bring this up. Again, this is all just artistic preference, whatever you think looks good. I'm just gonna do a first pass at saturation. I'll probably add a little bit more later. So I'm happy with that. I will apply that. Now I'm going to bring down the saturation in the background. So let's invert the mask. Come up here to mask, invert mask, and then open up the real-time preview. Click reset. Now I don't want to clip out all of the saturation of the background, or else it just looks kind of weird, but I am going to try to just make it look a little bit more neutral. I think that looks pretty good. Press apply. Set. Okay. All right, let's remove the mask. So the next thing that I'm going to do is reduce the size of the stars that are outside of the galaxy in this image ever so slightly, and that's just to make the galaxy more of the focus point in this image. You do not need to do this step. However, if you would like, you can try it out. It is really cool to know how to do this, and this is all just artistic preference. So again, you don't have to do this step, but I would like to. So to do this, there are a couple ways to do this, but I'm going to show you how to do this with PixelMath using Bill Blanshan's PixelMath processes for this. So just like we needed to download the stretching file from Bill to our computer, we need to do the same for the star reduction method file. So I will link this Google Drive down below in the description box for you. This is actually Luke's, or Luke Imadigo's Google Drive. He and Bill did a really great overview of the star reduction method that Bill created on Luke's website, Luke's YouTube channel. So I will link that video down below as well. They go in depth on how to use this and how this works, and it's just really great. So thank you to Bill for this, and thank you, Luke, for hosting Bill on your channel and sharing this information. I really appreciate it. So it's going to be this this file right here, Bill's star reduction method, right here. Go ahead and download it to your computer. I already have. I'm going to open that up. So I have it here, and I want build star reduction methods B3. And I think it goes to the side, so let me just minimize luminance. So in order to use these process icons, we need to remove the stars in the image and create a starless version. You can either use Star Exterminator from RC Astro, or you can use StarNet. StarNet is free. I will link to it down below so you can install that to PixInsight if you haven't installed it already. So we first need to clone for starless, so let's open that up. And this is basically just going to create a new image from this image named starless. And this is the image that we need to apply Star Exterminator or StarNet to. So come up here to process, down here to object recognition, and Star Exterminator. Again, if you want to use StarNet, you can use StarNet instead. So I'm going to use Star Exterminator. I am going to generate a star image and unscreen the stars and press apply. Okay, so the stars have been removed. We can minimize our stars image. We can minimize Star Exterminator. Now let's create a range mask based off of our starless image. Open up range selection, click reset, open that up. Let's okay, I'm good with that. Close out of that, minimize that, and then I'm going to open up, I have this. Let's open up histogram transformation, preview. Just so I get all the areas. Okay, minimize that. I'm going to minimize starless, bring that over here. Then I'm going to apply this range mask to RGB, minimize that. And I want to invert it, so come up here to mask, invert mask. And I'm going to apply star reduction method number 2. You can try out all the different methods. I just found that star reduction method number 2 works well for this. Again, if you want to understand what goes into all this, Bill does a really great overview of this on Luke's channel. I have linked that video down below for you if you want to check it out. So let's apply this to the target image. Okay, mask, remove mask. And that looks pretty good. So it's very subtle. I didn't want to do anything crazy. If you want to reduce the star size a little bit more, you can adjust the size here and just experiment if that's what you wanted to do. So let me bring this over and number 2, just so we know what we've done. I did just want to let you know that I changed the name of the RGB image to L_RGB. I probably should have done that when I combined the luminance data with the RGB image, but I did not, and alas. I just didn't want to confuse you now. So just letting you know. Okay, I think now we're at a good place where we can integrate the HA data into the LRGB image. And there are a few different ways you can do this, as there is with anything in PixInsight. What I have found to work is to create a mask and apply that to the LRGB image, and then use a PixelMath expression that I came across on Shawn Nielsen's YouTube channel, Visible Dark. So we are going to create that mask first, and hopefully this mask is going to help the HA to pop a little bit more, and also to preserve the colors in our color calibrated image. So let's go ahead and create that, create the mask first. we are going to extract the R channel from this image first. So come up here to Process, All Processes, over to RGB Working Space. So we want to make sure that all of your luminance coefficients are equal to 1. So I'm going to do that now. Press Apply. And that way when we extract the R channel from this LRGB image, everything is good to go. So we can come back up here to Process, All Processes, and down to Channel Extraction. And we want to keep the color space as RGB, and we want to only extract the R channel, so you can deselect G and B and keep everything else the same. Press Apply. Okay, I'll minimize channel extraction. And now we have the R channel. I'm going to rename this to R. And now we need to remove the stars. So I'm going to use RC Astro Star Exterminator. Again, you can use StarNet if you would like instead. I'm going to do that now. Okay, we can minimize the stars. And then we need to remove the stars in our HA image. Right. Okay, we can minimize HA stars. Probably didn't need to create the star images, but I did anyways. So let's minimize Star Exterminator. And now we need to linear fit the R channel to the HA image. So come up here to Process, All Processes, over and down to Linear Fit. And now this may be a little bit controversial because I'm using linear fit in a non-linear state, but I have found this works really well when you're combining narrowband data into RGB data. So for those who don't know linear fit is a process that allows us to match the inherent brightness levels from one image to another image. So I'm going to use the reference image here as HA, and so I'm going to apply the inherent brightness level of HA to the R image. So I'll minimize that, bring that over to R, and this is just going to make the mask bring out the HA a lot more when we do add HA in. So we can minimize linear fit. And then let's open up PixelMath to create our mask. Come here to Process, All Processes, and down to PixelMath. And this is a pretty simple expression. We're going to take HA minus R times an amount. And we're going to come over here to the Symbols panel. And we're going to specify that amount by typing in amount equals. And I like to start off with 0.8. And we want to create a new image. I'm going to name this combined image, so I'll just do comb IMG. You can, of course, name it whatever you'd like. Then press Apply, minimize PixelMath. So we can make this a little bit brighter if we would like. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to open up histogram transformation. I'm going to click Reset. Open up the preview, real-time preview window, track my changes, and I'm going to clip the shadows quite a lot. And again, by adding contrast, it just makes for better masks, I found. And then I'm going to bring up the midtones. All right. Minimize histogram transformation and minimize R. I'm going to apply this image to the LRGB image. So now that we have this mask, we need to download Shawn Nielsen's HaRGB combination PixelMath process icon. If you're not familiar with Shawn Nielsen, he is an astrophotographer and YouTuber. His YouTube channel is called Visible Dark, and he creates really awesome content as well, so please check him out if you haven't already. So we are going to go to this link here. We're going to download the file as we did the other two, and make sure you put them in, or make sure you put it in a location that you can remember. And then you're going to want to open that up. All right, and we can open it up. So here it is, HaRGB _ combine. and it's right here. Open that up. Go back over here to bring this over. So I'm just going to apply the default settings here. So basically this is what's going to be applied to the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel. Just make sure that HA is spelled the exact same way, and also it's case sensitive, so make sure that your HA image, the identifier is HA, or type in whatever the identifier for your HA image is to the R channel and here in the blue channel. Again, if you want to know more about all of this, just check out Shawn Nielsen's video on this. I'm not going to get into it just for the sake of time. So let's apply these settings to L RGB. Alright, it's pretty subtle, but that's totally okay. And let's minimize that. Alright, so I want to make the HA pop a little bit more. So open up Curves Transformation, click Reset, open up the real-time preview. I'm going to go under the R channel. I am happy with that. Press Apply. Okay, you can close the real-time preview. You can remove the mask. You can minimize Curves Transformation. And let's open up another range mask. This is, I'm actually going to just use my first range mask. Now over here, open up color saturation, real-time preview, reset, and again, totally just artist's preference. I'm going to move it here. Again, if you don't want it as saturated, you don't have to do this part. I'm gonna press OK. And I'm going to invert the mask one more time. Minimize that, and take this mask off. Open up Curves Transformation, reset, go to RGB K, and I'm just going to ever so gently do some contrast with the galaxy in the background. All right, let's reset, and I am going to add that range selection one more time, and Curves Transformation. I'm going to bring down mask, invert mask, and just bring that down a little bit more. That's okay. All right, and there we have it. Can remove this mask. I am pretty happy with this. I could have spent a really long time trying to process this, but I think this gives you a good idea of how to do L-RGB combination as well as how to add HA. This is only about 4 hours of data, I think. I can't totally remember off the top of my head. But yeah, I hope you found this tutorial helpful as well as this tutorial series. Please let me know down in the comments what other types of videos you would like. And as always, thank you so much for all of your support. I really love making these videos, and it means a lot. So until the next video, I hope everyone has clear skies.